On today's episode of Homeworthy, you're in for a real treat because one of our favorite hosts is back. You remember designer Darren Henault from his New York City Homeworthy episode.
When we walked in here, Michael was like, "Where's the apartment? Where's the apartment?" And then we walked in here, and Michael still kept saying, "Where's the apartment? Where's the apartment?" Because he kept thinking it was the foyer of the building still. And it's not, it's our living room.
He sometimes splurges on the small stuff.
There's one thing, my husband does not know this to this day. We've been here for 14 years. So there's a trim store called Samuel and Sons. And it's where I take all my clients and I buy trim. I buy things for edging, drapery and tassels and tiebacks and little details on chairs. And I've been working with the same salesperson there for 25 years. Janice, I love you. Super talented woman. So I walk in there, these are new, I put these up. I walk in there and I had a little trim that I was gonna use and it was discontinued. And Janice was like, "Oh, I know what you're gonna do. You're gonna take this in blue and you're gonna take this in terracotta and you're gonna overlay them and you're gonna use them together and then you're gonna put this braid on top of it." It was $10,000 for the trim on those curtains. And literally to this day, I'm still like, how did I spend $10,000 on trim for, but it was a moment. We had just moved in and I was feeling like, I'm moving into a mansion on Fifth Avenue. I should have $10,000 trim. Total stupid move.
But he's always the consummate host.
Nothing's too precious to have the dog on it. Nothing's too precious to have a child on it. People will be like, "Oh, I just had a baby." And we're like, "Come for the weekend. I have cribs. I've got a changing table." You don't create a house for it to be a set. You create a house to actually live in and for your friends to enjoy with you. So I don't understand the whole idea of wrapping your furniture in plastic and having cushions that look perfect all the time. That's not my shtick.
And today we're taking you inside this stunning Kips Bay Show House in Dallas, Texas, where Darren has transformed a nondescript space into a luxurious bedroom and bathroom. Wrapped in a beautiful hand-painted silk wallpaper, he used mismatched antiques and lots of layers to create a warm and inviting room that you'll never want to leave. Enjoy! You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. Be sure to visit our website, homeworthy.com, to discover amazing furniture, art, accessories, and more, all handpicked by our editors to help transform your house into a home. All of the items are inspired by the episodes you see here on Homeworthy. Enjoy!
Hi, my name is Darren Henault. I have a design firm called Darren Henault Interiors in New York. We're at Kips Bay in Dallas, and I was given the opportunity to design one of the guest rooms and a guest bath that's adjoining. So the interesting thing about Kips Bay is historically, when it's been in New York, they ask somebody to take a house that's for sale off the market. So the reason there's always been a very short period of time that you had to get it done really, really quickly was for that reason exactly. I'm not quite sure why they still do it on that ridiculous time frame, but they still do it on that ridiculous time frame. So we get invited the end of August to participate. They assign the rooms. I'm not from here, so the whole thing was just done via photographs. And then immediately I start calling people, vendors that I've used for years, and seeing who's willing to participate. Now, here's what's interesting. I originally wasn't going to do the Kips Bay Show House because I feel like, I'm old, I've done show houses, I've been around the block, I don't need to do this. Everybody that I called and asked about Dallas consistently said it is their biggest market in the country. Every vendor said have whatever and everything you'd like because it is the biggest market in the country. These ladies like to decorate, and they like to decorate big. And the other thing somebody said to me is, I looked at old photos of the past 4 years, and there were some young kids doing funky things. And I called my friend Jamie Drake, who's a great decorator, who's a mentor to me. And Jamie said, absolutely not. He said, you do what you do, which is old-fashioned, high-end decorating. So I have to tell you, I was thrilled when you all said you were going to come and cover this, because I sort of feel like, sometimes you get interviewed by people and it's the first time and you're like, oh God, how's this going to go? Their questions are going to be really mundane. But you might remember me, Homeworthy interviewed me in my country house in Millbrook. Homeworthy interviewed me at my city house in New York. And I loved it. I thought it was a great experience. I thought you did an amazing job of making me sound smart, which is not always easy. And it's sort of like coming home. Oh, look at that, coming home, Homeworthy, get it? That's good. So yes, you might remember me like whispering about how much the trim in my room cost. And I fully admit that was a moment of complete hysteria on my part. I can't say that this trim is $10,000. An interesting thing is, the Shade Store was a sponsor for the house. I'm used to working with workrooms that are really amazing with detail and more like dress couturiers than they are workrooms. And so I asked the Shade Store all these questions. I was like, when you do the leading edge, do you hand stitch it? And they said yes. When you do the hem, is it a blind stitch? Yes. So they were fun to work with. And the great thing about Count and Tout is they have miles and miles of trim. And so they let me put it on absolutely everything. The other genius thing is I don't have to pay for it. So I have no idea how much any of it costs. I do know that the Gracie fabric, although not obscene, is not inexpensive. So when the show house is over, we have to turn this back into a white box. And these are coming home because this is going to be a pair of pants. It's going to be a jacket. It might be a little hat. I'm not quite sure what it's going to be, but I'll be wearing this walking down Fifth Avenue at some point. The process is you get a white box. You've got less than 12 weeks to design it, find all the vendors, put it together, do construction, because you literally have to move electricity. I had to move plumbing in the bathrooms. I moved a wall because I didn't like how small the bathroom was. I had to find a contractor down here in Dallas, and a local designer was incredibly helpful in that. Dallas, everybody has been so friendly. Look, New York's lovely, and the design community is really supportive of each other, and they're very generous. Dallas takes it to a whole new level. I mean, these people were just so thrilled to have everybody and anybody participate that they've all been really lovely and really kind. So I did. I hired a local architect, and he helped me survey the room. So I had drawings to work with remotely. I walked into Fromental, which is the maker of this wallpaper. It's all hand painted on silk. Immediately they said, sure, you can take that. I then went into Gracie, and Gracie's now making their wall patterns. They started digitally printing them on fabric. So this is sort of one of the first presentations of this fabric in the country for them. So they were really excited to participate. And then finally I walked into Count and Tout, which has several brands under their header. And literally in 20 minutes chose the rest of the fabrics for the room. I've been doing this for a long time. It's a pretty quick process. It's funny, everybody asks the question, what's your inspiration? And I would love to say that there was a thing, like I heard a Joni Mitchell song, and that's sort of not how it works for me. It's the space. It's I hate a tray ceiling. Like this room has a tray ceiling, and a tray ceiling to me screams 80s, spec house, bad architecture. So immediately I knew I was going to make the ceiling look tented. Now, interesting, because I happen to have my own brand called Tent, but it sort of started from there. I knew the room, I knew the ceiling was going to be tented, I knew it was going to be upholstered, and so we then just pulled all of the texture down from that starting point. So here's a little tour of the room. So as I mentioned, we started with the ceiling, then this is the Fromental wallpaper. This is silk, and it's all hand painted. Ordinarily, it also would have been embellished with hand embroidery, but they didn't have enough time to get that thing done. This is something that I designed. This is part of my furniture collection. I originally designed it for my kitchen so that I could sit here with my kids while my husband cooks. But then remembered my husband hates when people are in the kitchen when he's cooking, so we never got to sit on the stupid thing. This fixture, this light fixture, ages ago, I found a foundry in Florence that had all the molds for a sculpture called Tofinari from the 1940s. And he'd done nothing with the sculptures because they're all a little odd and weird. So I created a line of furniture, and this is one of the pieces. It's a lamp. It's available at Maison Girard on 10th Street in New York. And then this, like, because you got to add a little more when you can add a little more. This is brush fringe that ordinarily would either be down or would be on a pillow, and we used it so it was pushing up to give it a little height. You know, was this necessary? Nobody here in Dallas knows me. I thought I'd throw some personal photographs here, because it gives a little color as to who I am, and maybe people would feel like they had a little more intimacy with me in terms of hiring me to design their houses. But also, it makes it feel like a room. It makes it feel like a proper room in a proper house, not just a show house, not just a showroom. Because I don't like rooms that are cold. Things have to be fully worked out and really cozy. The rug is actually from my rug collection from my store tent. This is a Lavar Kerman. It's a beautiful rug, and weirdly, I called the warehouse and said, I need a Lavar Kerman. I need it to be this size. And one of the warehouse guys called back and he said, I literally have what you want, 6 inches short on each side. So it's as though it was made for the room. It's pretty brilliant. This is a sculptress that's in California. I love her work. I love how organic it is. I think it's really beautiful against the background of the Gracie. I think it's really spectacular against the background of this. I love that it's a modern feature in a room that's otherwise relatively traditional. And then something that sort of happened organically that I wasn't really doing on purpose is these lamps. I had asked that woman to make lamps for the store as well. And so I had these in the store, and they're the same material. They're a white plaster. And then I needed a ceiling fixture, and it just seemed to me like I should keep going with that theme and have a connection that sort of wrapped both sides of the room. So that's another plaster fixture. That's from Liz O'Brien in New York. The upholstered pieces are from my collection. They're sold at Tent. And again, you know, ordinarily there'd be a massive tea cushion on this if this were coming out of some lousy factory. And instead, I keep the pillows sort of light, so the seat is really deep and it's super comfortable. You don't need this decorative pillow here, but it's a show house, and you know, we added it. On the chaise, same thing. The scale of the chairs, the length, literally, it was very important to me that a tall or short person, one could sit this way with their legs this way, and somebody could sit that way with their legs this way. And it's intimate, but you're not on top of each other. So you don't feel like you're cramped into a single chair. It really feels like the super luxurious chaise. So yeah, scale's super important. I also, you know, you'll notice this is on the diagonal. I do this all the time. I can't stand when furniture hugs a wall too tightly. Like, no piece of furniture should be closer than 2 inches from a wall. Like, a piece of furniture has its own life. It should be able to breathe. And I just think putting this on the diagonal made it more dynamic. And speaking of placement, so often you walk into a bedroom and there'll be a desk, but the desk will be facing the window. And so you have your back to the room and you're not actually experiencing the room while you're working at the desk, or it'll have the back to the window. So you're looking at the room. If you put it perpendicular to the window, you get the whole experience. You get the ability to look outside, you get the ability to see the room and enjoy the room. So for the antiques in the room, I didn't really want to ship a ton of stuff down from the people I usually work with in New York. So I went on First Dibs and I just scoured Dallas for pieces that I was interested in. And luckily I found this pair of chest of drawers. And when I called the guy, he's like, I'm really sorry, they're not a matching pair. I was like, perfect, I don't want them to be a matching pair. Like, they're so much better not matching. And it sort of gives the feeling that one's female, one's male. Not that you can't have two men living in this house, but I love a mismatched pair. I think a mismatched pair is great. This is a textile from Jack Leonard Larson. Jack Leonard Larson was very influenced by Asian textiles. And I love the way, I didn't purposely create sort of an Asian theme, but you know, the Chinese pattern on the windows from Gracie, this from Jack Leonard Larson, the weeping willow walls, it all sort of comes together. People often say, God, you're amazing at putting things together. And can I tell you the truth? It's sort of something that happens in the back of my mind. It's not always something that happens intentionally. I pull things and my eye is just putting things together and the back of my brain is connecting them. And it really isn't until they're all laid out that I start to see the connections. It's rarely that intentional. I don't like thematic rooms, so it's rarely that intentional. And then just one final thing about this is a company, I walked into a store on the left bank of Paris 20 years ago called Galerie de Lampe, and they made the most beautiful light fixtures. And luckily, they're now represented in the United States by, I think, Iatesta in Dallas, and John Roselli in New York. And I don't know, there's this sort of architectural, weird, mechanic vibe to them that's very 19th century, which I just relate to. I think works incredibly well with all of my work. Honestly, I purposely displayed a bunch of books on the ottoman at the foot of the bed so that people aren't just throwing their clothes all over the ottoman. You know, frankly, I'd rather they threw their clothes on the floor than on the ottoman. I just find if you use this, if it's a flat piece and you use it more as a coffee table, people are less likely to just continually throw their clothes as they're getting undressed at night. One thing I want to point out about this is actually a vertical pattern. This is a series of stripes, embroidered stripes on a fabric from Cowton, and I just cut one layer out and used that as a skirt on the ottoman. So as a foil to all of this prettiness, all of this elegance, I hung a piece of art by a woman named Anne Harris. Now, Anne Harris historically did decorative painting on walls and created entire rooms. And she, you know, wanted to do something a little different, so she started doing these paintings. And this is one of a parrot claw, which I thought was really cool. And I actually moved this wall to make the bathroom bigger, but I moved it exactly so that that piece of art would fit. Then these closets, we mirrored the closets because I wanted to make sure that it created a double image of the claw coming back at itself. And then additionally, I also wanted to make sure that if somebody was in the room and at that angle, they saw the reflection of the bathroom to make sure they were drawn into the bathroom. So for the bathroom, I worked with artistic tile. I don't think bathrooms should be a cacophony of color. You're gonna be naked and there's a lot of mirrors, so you're gonna be seeing all this color behind you. I do not wanna look at greens, purples, oranges behind me when I'm naked. I want something relatively neutral. So this is Arabescata. It's a relatively neutral stone, but it has a fair amount of movement to it, so it creates a beautiful pattern. So you'll notice I used that material, but in different textures. So we've got the groove, we've got the slab, and then I cut that grooved tile to create the baseboard, to create the casing around the window, and then finally to create the crown in the room. And then the floor was chosen to be polar opposite of the walls, to give it a really grounded feeling. It's got what's called a leather finish, which is super, super textured, great for not slipping on. And I just think it's a really beautiful contrast to how subtle the walls are. And then finally, just to add a little bit of jewelry, that same Arabescato comes as a, here, step into my shower, comes as a mosaic. And the mosaic gives you the benefit of lots of traction on the floor, so you really won't slip. But then I kept it going up the wall, and I did it on the ceiling just to give it a little bit more glitz without going too far over the top. What I love most about my room is I did the installation, and then I called my husband, and Michael, and he said, how do you feel? How do you feel about it? And I said, honestly, it's a room we would live in. Because it's layered and textured. Look, I never want somebody to walk into a room that I've done and go, wow, that to me that means I didn't do my job. That means it's too flat, two-dimensional, doesn't work. If I've done my job, you need to sit in that room and be in that space for 10, 15 minutes minimally before you've really started to absorb what's happening, because there's so many layers, there's so much texture. Hopefully the furniture layout is dynamic and incredibly useful and creates various places to sit in one space. So it's a multi-purpose room. Every room should be a multi-purpose room.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.